Is Athletic Greens a scam? Today we are taking a look at a double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial done by Athletic Greens to answer just this question. Hey guys, my name is Philip with MD Fit. I'm a fourth-year medical student very interested in health optimization, longevity, and performance medicine. And today we're breaking down this question of, is one of the biggest health and fitness supplements in our market today a complete scam? I saw a post by Brian Johnson calling Athletic Greens out recently, and he pointed to this study as means to show that Athletic Greens does not work. Now, I think that there is probably a more nuanced approach or a nuanced take to be had here, and I would just like to facilitate a discourse or a discussion as to what Athletic Greens can do for you and what it purports to do, right? Versus what people might be thinking that it can do for you and how it's advertised, because there is a lot of marketing and there is a lot of hype behind this supplement. And I do agree with him on certain areas, but I don't necessarily know if it's a complete waste of money or a scam. But let's get into it. So essentially, the researchers wanted to mainly see what the effect of Athletic Greens supplementation. They did a 4-week trial of Athletic Greens, comparing Athletic Greens to a placebo, and they looked at primarily microbial composition and effect. They also looked at subjective questionnaires where they looked at stool frequency and consistency and things of that nature, just how well you feel like personally your stools have been. Are they more regular? Are your poops healthier and more well formed, or are you more constipated? Things of that nature. And then finally, they also looked at basic blood work measures to look at your lipid profile to see if there's any big changes that could happen. But this is essentially a multivitamin, so we kind of already know the answer to that question. Now, why is this study important? Why is Athletic Greens even a thing? Well, it's essentially marketed as a microbial support supplement, right? It contains vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, probiotics, and prebiotics. And a lot of this is marketed with the idea that this is microbiome support. And so why is your microbiome important? As many of you know, your microbiome is composed of trillions of organisms that live within your large intestine and colon, and they have a variety of different functions. From metabolic and nutrient processing, they digest or they ferment indigestible carbohydrates like fiber into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, propionate, and acetate. All of these things are very important for the body for a variety of different reasons. We're not going to get into all of the weeds because this video could get very long very quick if we're breaking down all of the functions of the microbiome, which is another video that we could make if you're interested. Another function is that it synthesizes vitamins like vitamin K and vitamin B, vitamin B1, 2, 6, 9, and 12. It also functions with immune system regulation. 70% of immune systems interface with the gut, and it plays a large role in immunity, whether or not you're prone to sickness and illness and allergies. There's also gut barrier integrity. It plays a role in preventing leaky gut, or prevents pathogens from leaking into your bloodstream. It protects against pathogens. It also has a role in communication between the gut and the brain, known as the gut-brain axis. It produces and modulates a variety of neurotransmitters from serotonin to GABA and dopamine precursors. It also communicates to the brain via the vagus nerve directly. It also has a role in hormone balancing and hormone signaling. They influence endocrine function through regulating things like incretin hormones like GLP-1, which is obviously super talked about now, PYY. It affects insulin and satiety. There's also clinical relevance tying the microbiome to things like obesity, PCOS, menopause, and appetite regulation. It also plays a role in detoxification, detoxifying the body. And then finally, it also has a large role in inflammation and aging. Short-chain fatty acids produced by these microbes suppress NF-kappa B signaling, which is a pro-inflammatory pathway throughout the body that can accelerate aging. Additionally, it maintains mitochondrial health and redox balance and influences oxidative stress and immune aging throughout the body. And dysbiosis is linked to frailty, sarcopenia, cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, and even cancers. So the microbiome is extremely important. It's something that we don't know a whole lot about still, and there's a whole field of research that is being done uncovering new functions of the microbiome. So microbiome support is extremely important, especially in today's day and age. Now, most of your microbiome is determined genetically, around 70%, give or take, but there is still a large amount that is influenced by your environment, whether it be environmental toxin exposure like pollution, how much pollution do you interface with, right? Or just even things like your diet, right? The things that you eat logically would play a large role in what your microbiome composition looks like. And in an obese person, their microbiome looks extremely different from a healthy, fit person, to the point where one therapy that they do clinically for obese people to correct their microbiome, because they've destroyed it and killed so many important colonies off, is they actually will transplant fecal matter. It's called a fecal matter transplant. They'll take poop from a healthy person and give it to an unhealthy person. And in these people, you can literally see improvements in insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity, and a host of other kind of clinically relevant markers that literally just are a result of having a healthy person's microbiome introduced to yourself. So having the healthiest microbiome you could have is definitely within your best interest. So let's look at this study. Let's see, does athletic greens improve the microbiome? Well, let's talk about the methods real quick. Let's talk about what they did. They took 30 people, they randomized them, 15 men, 15 women, and then they split them into two groups. One received athletic greens and one received a placebo. And the participants, as well as the researchers, were both blind to who was getting what. So this is a great way to eliminate sources of error. They did a 4-week study. They did a initial screening test, then they did baseline tests, and then they did post testing. They did a stool sample pre and post, as well as a host of different questionnaires asking about stool consistency, stool function, how it's formed, things of that nature. And then they also did basic blood markers like a complete blood count, comprehensive metabolic panel, and lipid panel. So what were the results of this study? Well, in the athletic greens group, they found that 4 different taxa were enriched and 1 was reduced. And a taxa is essentially like a species of a microbe, right? A certain type of microbe. In the placebo group, 6 taxa were enriched, but 5 were diminished over time. So this indicates that there is some microbiome drift that occurs even without athletic greens. And this also kind of shows us that one stool sample, or no 2 stool samples could ever be the same. Even if you do nothing different, just by living life, just by consequence of living your life, if you do a stool sample on one day and then you give another stool sample on another day, there will be variety, there will be changes within different taxa, whether or not one's enriched or one's diminished over time. So this kind of points to the idea that while, yes, we're seeing maybe improvements in certain types of taxa, and while athletic greens does contain 2 probiotic species, lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which were enriched through taking athletic greens. So it kind of shows that, okay, they have this probiotic in their supplement and it increases and improves the richness and diversity of this species within your gut. So it is showing that their supplement does work in a way, right? It's a probiotic and it improves these species. These certain microbial species have also been shown to have beneficial impacts on your health from an insulin signaling perspective, as well as an inflammation regulatory perspective. There's a host of different things that they do. I'm also not an expert, but essentially it's showing that their supplement works in a way. Now, in terms of their questionnaires, looking at their stool frequency and consistency and stuff like that, neither the AG1 nor placebo group had any statistically significant differences in GI symptom scores, bowel frequency, or stool consistency. I mean, this kind of makes sense because if you're taking 2 healthy people, right? If you're taking people that are healthy at baseline, they don't have any IBS or GI aberrations, right? They're not on antibiotics or something that could be causing them to have poor stooling, then it's not necessarily going to make your stools better if they're already good. So that isn't necessarily a knock in my opinion, which is something that I saw on Brian Johnson's post where he's really kind of bashing, oh, your stools don't get better. Well, why would they get better? Finally, in terms of blood work for safety and tolerability, there were no clinically meaningful differences or adverse changes in the complete blood count, the comprehensive metabolic panel, lipids, or vital signs. And there was a significant elevation in creatinine, which can be a very, very loose marker for kidney function, right? If you have elevated creatinine, it can be a sign that your kidneys aren't working as well. But there are many better studies that they could have used to look at kidney function, like cystatin C. I don't think they really anticipated this finding. This could be potentially the result of random chance. Even though it was statistically significant, there is still a 5% chance that it is purely due to chance. So I don't really see an underlying mechanistic explanation as to why athletic greens would be bad for your kidneys. And so it's not necessarily something I'm worrying about, but I think they could do a follow-up looking at a marker of cystatin C, which is a much more sensitive and more accurate depiction of what your kidneys are looking like over time. So what did the authors conclude? Well, they concluded that athletic greens at the very least improves or influences beneficial probiotic taxa within the gut, mainly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And these are two bacteria or microbes that are within athletic greens, that are put in athletic greens. And so showing that it does not get affected or it does not get completely damaged by the digestive system, and that it's actually able to make it into the colon and improve these species is big, right? Because one of the big complaints of a lot of probiotics is that they're actually useless because through digestion, right, through drinking probiotics, these live probiotics, they go into your stomach acid, they go through the small intestine, and they're just dead by the time they get to the colon, and they're essentially useless. But athletic greens passes through and it makes it to the colon, showing that there is some use. Now, that's really where it stops. There aren't any hard endpoints, hard outcomes, but this is a supplement, right? This is just a health food supplement at the end of the day. I didn't really feel like there are any major claims being made by athletic greens in terms of what their supplement will do or can do for you. It's not going to heal you. It's not going to make you a healthy person if you are unhealthy. What it will do is correct any potential nutritional deficiencies. If you're getting low amounts of B vitamins and phytonutrients, for example, it could help correct these things and also support your GI tract. Additionally, if you are somebody who has GI issues, if you deal with leaky gut, if you deal with IBS, it could potentially be helpful. But again, it's comparing healthy people. And so I think a future follow-up study that could be very beneficial, that could give us some hard endpoints, are how does athletic greens affect the microbiome composition, as well as kind of the subjective stooling reports in people with conditions, right? GI conditions like irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease, things of that nature, or colitis. I think that could be a really interesting study to be done, and it could actually potentially show athletic greens has a positive impact clinically. But that's all that can really be said about this study. I don't really think it shows that athletic greens is a scam. I think it shows that it's not necessary, right? You don't need to be taking athletic greens every day. I think that is far more marketing and things of that nature, which, is within their prerogative to do, right? They want to sell you a supplement, but I don't think it means that the supplement is completely useless. It just means you need to use it properly, right? So if you're in a diet, if you're in extreme caloric deficit, if you haven't been eating a lot of micronutrients, I mean, it's a multivitamin, right? And it's a multivitamin that comes from whole food ingredients. So if that's something that really matters to you, then there you go. It also has probiotics and prebiotics, so it can cover your bases for people who are in a kind of nutrient depleted or nutrient deficient state. And a lot of people are, by the way. A lot of people are not capable or not really able to get in all of the nutrients that they require to be functioning optimally. So I think there is an argument to be made about taking athletic greens on a semi-frequent basis. I myself do have athletic greens, but I take it maybe once a week or something to that effect. I take it very rarely, only on days where I haven't necessarily had a lot of micronutrients, right? If I didn't eat a lot of vegetables or something like that and I want to take a multivitamin supplement, that's when I take it. And I think that's how supplements need to be approached, right? They're supplements. They're supplemental to your diet. They should not replace anything. And I don't think you should really be supplementing something like this in your diet on a daily basis. If you feel like you need to, you probably should just correct your diet. But that's all I got to say about this study. I think it was really interesting, and I think it could spark an interesting conversation. So let me know if you guys have any thoughts down in the comments below. But with that, that's going to be it. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps with the algorithm. And with that, we'll see you guys in the next video.